Okay, so I think we might have just touched on one of these, but I want to make sure that you guys know about these. Under filter, and then you have your blur that we've talked about, correct?
I think so.
Well, we talked about all these Gaussian blur and all that stuff, right? Radial blur. I mean, we've used those over and over again. But if you go down one more below it, it has all this stuff that you can fine tune here. So I'm going to go to iris. And what it does is it gives you a lot more control over how you're doing these blurs. And you can get pretty targeted and pull these things. And like here, I can pull these in and it concentrates my view, if you can see that. This is how much blur. And then I can come over here. This is just the amount of blur. Just make it thin. Let's see what this does. Okay, so here you got these lighting effects down here. So there's a bunch of different things you can tune in here and get all these different effects. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so that's iris blur. There's also, because I think these are really useful in also with concept painting and things like that. If you want to get, those kind of cool blurred effects in it, which you do quite a bit. There's iris blur, there's tilt shift, which gives you all these controls, where I can come in here and control that, control this. And then again, here's how much blur I have. So let's put it about there. And then again, you got this, I don't know what this bokeh, whatever this word means, but it basically affects the light. So I can get a little more of a night light there if I want, a little more color in there, so on and so forth. And then the blur and then the distortion. Okay, does that make sense?
Yes.
And right here, you can turn off preview if you want to see what you've done right there. Okay. And then you can save this mask to channels, which is kind of interesting. I've never done that. Let's try focus. I haven't done that either. Cancel. Let's go to filter, blur gallery. Let's try path blur is kind of interesting. So it's got this path stuff that you can adjust. Oops, I just screwed up. Hang on. Let's go to filter. Path blur. So you can control this. And it's got these different points. Oops. And then let's take this. I'm adding points like I shouldn't be. But it'll follow this and I can dial this in how it's following this path. Does that make sense, you guys?
Yeah.
And I should be able to go, see, I can keep adding to it. I can come in here and start using these controls. That's the taper, the speed. Okay, so if I'm using this for, basically you can come in here and play these. They're pretty self-explanatory. Okay, this is a spin blur, I think. Yeah, there's your spin blur, which is was right there. So I can do that in target areas. I can pull it out. I can move it, all those different things I want to do. Let's do one more. Let's go to filter. And then spin blur, which is just that one I just did on its own. Does that make sense? At first I was kind of like, what would I need this for? So right here where your crop tool is, that's weird. That's weird. It's not giving me my regular crop tool. Who cares? I don't need it. Is this little tool here called the perspective grid, perspective crop tool. Okay. So I'm going to go up here and I'm going to follow. If you see now, it's pulling a point down here. I'm going to put it like right here. And then I'm going to follow this perspective right to here. And then, okay, so what I'm doing is there's a little grid on there. You can up how much you have of the grid and all that kind of thing if you want. You can see my grid is kind of following the perspective of the building. Can you guys see that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to hit enter. And what it does is it takes that perspective thing and it turns it into a front view for me. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Now,
Oh, that's cool.
it's funny because I
Cool.
was just going like, yeah, I don't know what I need this for, but then yesterday, hang on, we were at, because we're looking for house stuff right now. And we found this rug, right? And my girlfriend was like, hot on buying it. I go, well, let me Photoshop it into the room first. Well, the first thing I have to do here, if I'm going to do that, is come in here and get it straight. So this straightens it out for me. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, it squished it. I don't know why I did that. It doesn't usually do that.
That would have been handy a couple of weeks ago.
It actually, it's weird because I just thought of it again, this tool. And then it's some reason for it's kind of why it popped in my head. Normally it doesn't squish out like that. I don't know why I did that. But there's a lot of times where I have to straighten things out now that I think about it that are in perspective, right? And that way I can just get them flattened out, because before what I'm going to have to do is then lay it down in the room from a photograph and then angle it into the perspective of the room. Well, it's a lot easier, obviously, if I'm starting with a straight image. Does that make sense?
That's the tool that they use for interior. Well, not just interior, but many types of architectural design.
I mean, all these things just have a million uses, and sorry, by the way, that I'm like in this weird, I need a taller chair or something. It's the Wacom has a weird system where I don't know if it goes any higher. I want it actually well, then I can't really draw it.
It's all right, Mike.
What I
But
need to do actually is put in the kit for this system is a webcam, and then I can just put the webcam up where I want it.
like you said right now, that even though that they're seem very specific, these type of tools like the one for Professor Frank, and even the ones that you've been teaching us, eventually they're going to get used
Oh, yeah.
in so many ways.
Yeah, here's the thing with all this stuff, and this is from my experience, okay? And I probably said this, but it's really important. It's like, don't become an old dog with old tricks. And it's really easy to do, by the way, because you get into, especially if you're working in house, you're getting into these really fast workflows and everything, and you sort of go, especially if you're like me, I came at it from traditional, okay? So it's sort of like taking all my traditional knowledge and sort of figuring out ways to apply it to whatever, Photoshop or whatever. And that's fine. And then I think I've told you guys, then I would get files from people who were total Photoshop jocks. Okay. Or I had this guy working for me one time who was I didn't think he was a very good designer, but he was a total Photoshop jock, right? So he's probably the guy that showed me the gradient map thing, probably. But he knew all those tricks, and his files were very clean. And I'd get style guides and things. And one I always remember was the Hulk style guide from, I guess it was the first movie, I don't remember. Because it was a long time ago. But that style guide, man, when you looked at their files, they were like so clean the way they set them up. You know what I mean? And I was looking at it going, there's these two, and I think it's good to have both, actually, which is why it's good to take a class and sort of learn all these tools and everything. And it's good to work really clean like that. Okay. Now, I don't want to build my files the exact same way those people do, because they're sort of building it from a different perspective, and it's totally fine. It works fine for them. But I'm drawing and painting a lot in there, and I just want that to be sort of a fluid environment for that. But now there's a bunch of these things like we're talking about here. And like I said, I didn't even know about half these things until I started teaching it. Because then I had to deep dive into, and I continue to do this. I'm always deep diving into these programs, looking at what's new, looking at things I've missed, looking at different uses for different tools and all that sort of thing. And you got to really stay on top of that stuff, okay? Because it's just going to speed up your workflow, okay? Which is super important. Don't get into the dumb thing that I did, which I did when I first came in. I probably said this too. When I first came in the industry, it was all about showing off I could draw and showing off, all this stuff. And it's like, that's not why they hired you. You know what I mean? They hired you to get the job done in a timely manner. So and it's not about that. And I think I was always a little bit my brain was always very focused on the artistic part of whatever I was doing. Okay. And it's actually weird. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's not. But like when you start going into management and things like that, they can start going like, why are you involved in the day-to-day design and all that kind of stuff? And it's like, I was also involved in the day-to-day management, but I also had, I needed that creative part of it and the artistic part of it. Otherwise, I'm not really interested. I don't want to just be a manager. It's not my thing. You know what I mean?
Right on.
I don't want to just sit in meetings all day long.
Mhm.
But you got to manage the perception. And I know that in my mind, I thought, well, I kick ass at this shit, man. But so they're like, I don't care. They're like, you're supposed to be in that meeting over there and you keep dodging meetings. You know what I mean? And that's kind of what they want you to do. When I worked at Imagineering, my boss, Ramsey, sometimes he would, when I was talking to him about, we're looking at sketches or whatever, and he'd go, geez, it's all I do. Like the producer would literally come over, we'd be talking, like drawing or whatever, and the producer would literally come over and go, we got a meeting, grab him by the arm and drag him away from the meeting. Okay. And he hated it because he liked the creative part too. And he's a super amazing art director, this guy. And he would complain to me about it. He goes, because I never get to touch anything anymore. He goes, all I do is sit in meetings. They would sit in meetings at that place from like when we got there in the morning. And this is for him. I didn't have to do this.
That's
in the
sad.
morning, they'd bring lunch in and continue the meeting. And then so the meeting would go from like, I don't know, 8 or 9 in the morning all the way till like 3 or 4 in the afternoon with really no break, that's kind of brutal, But anyway, you got to manage your perception that they don't just think whatever they think, because in certain companies, they have a very much a mindset that like you're management or you're creative. And I don't believe in that. I think I was creative management, and that's actually a big benefit to that. But there's a lot of people in the field that you'll find out, which is actually was kind of shocking to me, that a lot of them aren't really that great at the art part. They're just managers, right? I don't know how they get the jobs or anything. It doesn't make any sense to me, but I saw a lot of it. Okay. Just a lot. And art directors have a bad reputation for a reason. Okay. Because a lot of them can't do the work, and a lot of people don't respect it. Artists tend to not respect, especially artists of a high caliber in that field, like commercial work. They don't tend to respect art directors who can't do anything. I mean, so they're always leery of you. And if you come in as the art director, they're sitting there with their arms crossed going, okay, what do you got? Like, who are you? Like, what are you going to do? You can start firing everybody. You can start, what are you going to do? Do you know how to do anything? And once you prove that you can do stuff, they'll kind of side with you a little more.
Quick question, Mike.
Yeah.
So you, would you happen to have an example of file organization or what's it called, layer organization, or is that just something that I'm going to develop on my own?
I think you'll develop it. And the other thing is you'll start, once you start, once you get more familiar with this, I think one thing is sort of like when we were talking about that with Casey, with like grouping your folders, making groups of folders and everything. That's much better way to work. There's a few other things. I mean, there's a lot of sort of, and then also sort of looking at your file before you send it off, even if you're just sending it off to another creative, where they might have to work on it. They might have to work on it. Make sure your files are clearly named, they're clean, they're in folders and groups, and they're just super understandable. That's really what people want. Like I got files one time from it was for a package design, and it was like some huge chunk. It might have been Ghirardelli or Godiva, I can't remember who it was. But they had this really set up. I wish I got to find some of this stuff so I can show you guys this stuff. Really set up clean Illustrator or a Photoshop file that was set up for print. They sent it to me, and I was changing. They had like this swirl pattern in it that they did with like a bitmap. And the way they set it up, you couldn't edit it. Okay. Which, by the way, if you're the person who's working for whoever that was, Ghirardelli or whoever, you need to set up that is files that are going to go to multiple licensees, which is what we were. Okay. So you have to have a package set up where when you send that off to the licensee, they can go boom and make everything they need to make out of it, whether that's in-store, POP, a POP display, packaging, whatever it's going to be, right? Well, I couldn't change that pattern in the back because of the way they set it up. It was a total nightmare. Actually, and then I gave it to the guy I just talked about, who was a total Photoshop job. But it took him hours to untangle it and figure out some way to do it. Okay. But that is really weird because those files should be designed to be very easy to use. And they were really clean files except for that one problem. Okay. That just was not a very editable image. And, you know, so we ended up spending hours on it, which, you know, it's not very cost effective or time effective, you know. So you don't want to do things like that. And especially if you're sending things out, and 90% of the time you're in a pipeline. So whoever created that file should have been thinking, this is going to go to all our licensees, and this is how I think. And probably everybody thinks that those licensees, if I'm working for whoever, Disney, I mean, everybody licenses, right? Those licensees are keeping the company healthy, because every time I send out a package for somebody to do something, they're making product that we get a percentage of. Does that make sense? If I'm with the parent company, you know, so if I'm working for Lint or Godiva or Starbucks or whoever, you know, and Starbucks is actually really good about it. They have very organized style guides. Okay. So you don't have those problems with them. They tell you what to use, what not to use, with what they prefer, how the logos are used, how far the logo needs to be from the edge of this. If there's whites, I mean, they tell you everything. And that's called a, it's a style guide. It's also called a, God, why am I blanking right now? It's a graphics and standards guide or whatever. Okay. That's not just giving you all the assets. It's giving you all the information about how you use those assets. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. And sometimes you guys, if you're working, like when I just worked on that last, you know, right before I came to Fullerton, when I was working on a Disney product, they were sending me all these style guides. It really had nothing to do with what I was doing. It was just giving me some visual reference. That's really all it was doing. So sometimes you'll get style guides and you'll go, this doesn't really relate to what I'm doing. Well, that's what they got. And they just sent me like 100 style guides and just go, here's a bunch of reference of like characters and stuff and color and all that kind of stuff. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But it wasn't really designed for hard goods. Okay, so
Right on. Thank you.
Just got one more thing I'm gonna go over here, which I think this is what I think is really important. Hopefully I remember how to do that. Okay, you guys can see my screen, right?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, so let's go here. Let's make sure we're going to the let's put this back where it belongs. Okay, so I'm going to use the tool that I don't normally ever use just for brevity. Okay. And this is more or less the same color everywhere. Okay, so another thing too, real quick, I might have touched on this, I'm not sure, but there's another tool in here. Okay, you guys can see how it didn't select everything. You see that?
Yeah.
Okay, so right here, and I might have mentioned this, but I want to make sure. For little things like that, now I can just click this with the Magic Wand tool and it'll select it. But if I get little funky things, like maybe it came out here a little bit, I can hit this little thing here under my swatches here. And then I can just go to like my eraser tool and go, I don't want this here. Or if I wanted to paint some of the mask in somewhere and I could fine tune this mask. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
Yeah, that's
This
cool.
one's actually pretty good. So I'm going to go boom. There's still a little bit. So what I'm going to do here, let's see if I can just do this. Oops, screw it all up. Let's do this again. Let's try this. Let's try that. There we go. I'm just holding shift and trying to get rid of most of it. There we go. Okay, so we got a decent enough selection. Okay, then I'm going to go here to my layers. I'm going to go to adjustment layers, gradient map. Okay, and you can see it's changed it to black and white. I have black and white over here. Does that make sense so far?
Makes sense.
Okay, one of the things that used to be a big nightmare is if somebody gave me something, it could be anything. And I wanted to change it to white. I can come over here and dial this all in, and I'd have to pull my black probably out a little bit. Oops. And I can just come in here and I can dial in the white. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
It used to be a huge pain in the ass to do this if you don't do it with gray. There you go. Now you're starting to get white. Okay. Now the other thing I can do here, let's try this. So I could go to a black dress. Oops. Let's go to a deeper red. Now I would have to dial this in again. And I'd probably have to put like one more, probably mid value in here, probably. And I can start to dial this all in. I don't need this. I'm gonna go a little more. Right. And then I would deepen this up. And I can get this dialed in completely where you can't tell that it didn't start off as that color. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Why this is important is so you can get it dialed in perfect if you want. Why that's important is, I mean, there's a million times where, and it wasn't necessarily fashion stuff or whatever. It's really good for that. But I would just get something, I might have a vehicle or something like that. It could even just be like, if I got a prototype from the factory and the color was dark or something like that, and it's a prototype, and I need to do a paint master over it. There's two things I would use. I would take a picture of the model, separate it, then I would convert it using the gradient map to white. Why would I do that? Where'd you guys go?
Could you repeat that?
The reason I would want to do that is because if I wanted to create like a paint map for this thing, or a deco plan, or whatever you want to call it, like in the toy world, but it could be anything. I would want to reduce it. I would want to change that prototype to white so it'll accept all my overlays when I texture warp it, because I'm probably going to texture warp it. Okay. Because I'm probably going to do exactly what we did with the texture warp. But before I even start that, I've got to get, if it's like a dark blue or a dark gray, I've got to get it to basically a white value. Otherwise, it's really not going to accept my color correctly. Does that make sense? Otherwise, it's going to pick up all the whatever color it is. It's the gray, the whatever, you know, it's going to pick all that up and it's going to mush up my color, which I don't want. I want a clean white surface. It could be something that I rendered and it's in a color, and then I'm going to change it, you know, or somebody sends me something and I'm going to change it. All that stuff I'm going to probably need to start from white. Okay. Otherwise, it's not going to accept my overlays and color in the way I usually work. Okay. If I do an overlay on a dark color, it's just going to muddy everything up. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
And then what I used to do, which is stupid, but I had somebody else who worked in there and we figured out this way of doing it, but it never really looked very good. With the gradient map technique, I can keep everything so it literally looks like it started off that way. Okay. And the way I used to do it, it would sort of blow out a lot of the shadows and wash out a lot of the stuff. So I might have to go back in with a dodge and burn tool and start putting things back in. It was a real pain in the ass. Okay. Whereas if I already had a prototype or a model or a rendering or something like that, I could change it. Does that make sense? And I could first step is to get that surface white so it'll accept color. Otherwise, it's just not going to accept color. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Go ahead.
No, that's so useful. Thank you.
Yeah, I think And for like Mary, it'd be really useful because you could change, once she could change the dress color instantly, and then she could also wrap her pattern over it with the texture mapping thing. And now you can just do multiple passes on both. Make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Right on.
And I did use it a little bit for fashion stuff here and there. Actually, quite a bit now that I think about it. Because that world, they weren't always sending me the best reference. But to be honest with you, most people didn't send me great reference. Okay. Yeah, so. Okay. All right. All that makes sense, you guys?
Yeah.
And today I will get this up. It should download it now onto my computer. What else am I going to say? I'm going to try and get down back to the house early enough and do the paint over on Casey's thing. If I get that done, I'll load it. And then I'll, I know it's not, to me, it's not out of the realm of what we're doing in here because obviously I'm going to do it in Photoshop. And I'm hoping to just do it real quick, hopefully. Maybe I'll speed parts of it up or something. And if I get that done today, I will upload it today. And then we can speak to it tomorrow, and then I might use it for something tomorrow, maybe. I'm not sure yet. Yeah?
Sounds good.
Mike,
Yeah.
it's Isak. I missed some parts of the, that we went over yesterday when
Yeah.
if you could do a short video just on a couple of those things.
Yeah, that's my fault that it didn't record it. It's my fault. Otherwise, I would have put the recording up of it. It was, what did we go? We went over the history,
The
history of Rust.
lighting of the building
Oh, the
Yeah,
lighting.
lighting.
The lighting's right here. So let's look at it real quick.
and
The
some of the
other thing is
3D things.
Yeah. And the what?
It was some of the 3D features.
Actually, we did the lighting. Yeah, we did the lighting, which I think is what you're thinking is a 3D thing. And we did the history brush, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So the lighting thing, all you got to remember is just remember your lens flare, which is under render, right?
Oh, okay. Okay.
And
Yeah.
then just go to lighting effects. Oops, I got to pick a layer. Hang on. I'm going to undo this. Let's pick this. And then let's go to filter, render, lighting effects. Actually,
Not
it'll be
showing
on this.
your-
It'll be on this
your
video.
computer
So I'll
screen.
add it into this video. That's all.
Mike, we don't see your screen.
Oh, sorry. Because I undid it. Which I don't usually do. Now you do, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get rid of this. I don't know where that came from. And let's go to here. Let's go to. I want to start this over. Okay, so all you got to remember, because everything else is just dialing it in, it's not really that complicated. If you go up here to filter, which is where your, and then render, which is where your lens flare lives. Only you go down to lighting effects, it's right under lens flare.
Mike, we only see your Illustrator screen.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, that's super weird. Okay, this is what drives me crazy about Photoshop or Windows. It's like, why is it not just showing my screen? On my other one, it just shows my screen. Okay, so let's go here. You see it now?
Yeah, we can see it.
Now you see the girl, right?
Yes. Uh-huh. With the green.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so again, I'm going to go up here. I'm going to go to filter, render, right under lens flare, lighting effects. And it's going to give me my tools here. I don't want to stop. Hang on a sec, this might be because it is. Let me do something. Filter, render. Oh God, that's super annoying. I don't know what's going on with this. Hang on. This machine should have no memory problems. Okay, there it is. Okay, so you're going to get these choices. And it should actually have, it'll usually give you the little round, I don't know why it's not doing it here, to be honest. The little round thing, and that's what you're going to adjust your lighting with. It'll be self-explanatory when it comes up. Does that make sense? Let me
Yeah.
try a different file here. I'm going to try a different file. Let's try this one again. Let's try this again. There's something going on with my RAM. Okay, so that's why it's doing that. What'll happen here is you'll get your circle and you just pull and push the tabs in the circle. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I probably should have restarted for class, I guess. This machine should have way more power than my other machine, so I didn't bother with it. Just super annoying. There's all kinds of stuff doing weird stuff here. But what you need to know, and by the way, go into it today and make sure you don't have any problems with it. Tomorrow I'll be on my other machine, so I won't be struggling with these Windows things. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
Yeah, go to filter, render, lighting effects, and it should be fairly self-explanatory. Probably if I restarted this computer, it'd probably be fine. It's really weird to me. I'm not quite understanding that. You should have a lot of power. And then there's one other thing I want to show you from tomorrow, but I can't do it. There's a glitch. Let's go. Hang on a second. Oh, she's doing all kinds of weird stuff. Oh, there it is. Okay. Now you're just seeing me, right?
We see your screen. Uh-huh.
Oh, you see my screen. I'm trying to stop screen sharing, but it's not giving me that option, which is weird. No.
You can see your desktop.
Yeah, I'm trying to go back to just the room, which it's not even giving me that option. It's really weird. Screen share.
Your desktop is actually really clean.
That's because this computer is just now getting broke in. Yeah?
Yeah.
For some reason, it's just not. Oh, no? Because that's what you guys are seeing. Okay, I don't know what the hell happened here. It's super weird. I think this computer just needs to be restarted. Because I can't even get my gallery view up. Which is weird. Which I find really frustrating. I like to see people. Oh, all right, you guys. I'd have to restart this whole thing, which is annoying. All right, does all that make sense, you guys?
Yeah, it makes sense.
I'm gonna hopefully this thing should be downloading because it's saying it's recording. I'll edit it real quick. This should be quick because it's a short one. And then I'm gonna try and head up and get home in time to do the paint over. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, you guys. I'll
All
talk
right.
to you
Sounds
in the
good.
morning. Go ahead.
Oh, just sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, and try those things. I'll put it up right now. I'm gonna put it up before I head up the hill. Yeah?
Right on.
Okay,
Thanks,
will
Mike.
do.
Okay.
Hey guys, I'll see you in the morning.
See
All
you.
right, thanks,
Mike,
Mike. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mike, quick question.
What's that?
So all that to do tomorrow is just test.